This is a Dragon Blazer production.
This is Unsolved Comedy.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Unsolved Comedies. As always, I'm your host, Kizea, and we've got...
Stefan.
There he is. So, this episode is going to be a little bit different because we're going to be talking about a case that was never on Unsolved Mysteries. The case was actually just it's a case, I think it happened in 1993, so at this point it's like over 20 years old, worth of a case, but, you know, it is what it is, and we're gonna look into this case a little bit, and, kind of try to figure out exactly what's going on with this case. First off, have you ever heard of this case?
Only from you talking about it all the time.
Well, and I've tried very hard not to give anything away because I don't want to have to... I want him to be really shocked by this case because this case is extremely shocking. If you've ever heard of the West Memphis Three, you know exactly what I'm talking about. This case is fucking crazy. Like, it's nutso. It's, woo, like, out there, okay? So, I think the only thing I've mentioned to him about it, like, specifically, is that, like, it's about child murder and, like, some guys were wrongfully convicted.
Woohoo! Child murder!
Oh, God. Oh, God, it's starting already.
I'm just kidding. That's terrible.
I think that what's worse is that you made this joke and you have, like, 3 children of your own.
And I love them dearly.
But I'm actually going to let you decide where this one starts off.
I have the West Ohio 3.
Okay. I don't think that's the same. So I'm going to let you decide where this one starts off. We can either talk about the 3 8-year-old victims or the 3 wrongfully convicted men that I consider victims.
Let's get the crying out of the way and start with the 8-year-olds.
Let's start with the 8-year-olds then. Okay. I color-coded all of my stuff for this this episode in my notes because I did a lot of research, and a chunk of my research, it's hard to listen to if you're listening to somebody talk about it. It's hard to read. If you've ever watched the Paradise Lost documentaries, which I don't think you ever have.
I haven't.
The very opening scene, they're playing, like, Metallica Sanitarium. And
that's a bad thing?
No, but that's, like, the soundtrack to this case at this point. Like, that's the song everybody thinks of when you talk about this case. But they're playing this song, like, this eerie... I don't know if you've ever heard the intro, but it's, like, just, like...
I mean, I've listened to
guitar.
a lot of Metallica. I'm not sure if I've heard this particular song.
It's, like, picked out. Like, it's arpeggios, which you don't know what that means because you're not a guitarist, but if somebody out there is a guitarist, they will get that reference. They're arpeggios, which means that they're singular notes plugged in synquation of each other. So, like, you're thinking the intro to, like, Good Riddance, like that, that's an arpeggio, right? So, It's this creepy arpeggio set, and then they open the scene into the woods, and the first thing that you lay eyes on when you're watching this documentary is a little boy laying on the side of a creek bed. tied up, dead. And the next thing you see is another little boy tied up on the side of a creek bed, dead. And then you see a third boy laying next to the first boy, tied up on the side of the creek bed, dead. Like, they show you the three boys' dead bodies, and it's awful to watch. Like, I remember the first time I watched it, like, just looking at the boys, I cried. Like, it was awful. But it is something that makes me emotional, so don't judge me if, like, I cry at some point or get upset, because, like, I have little siblings, I have little cousins, you know, I want to have kids of my own someday, so this stuff, like, it makes me so fucking sick that somebody would do this to children. But before we jump into all of that horribleness, I do want to define something that we're going to need defining for later on in the case. And I've explained it to you once before, but just for the people listening, I would like to explain what it is. It's called an Alfred plea. And we might not need this until the second episode, but I'm going to define it in the first episode and the second episode so that if we have any questions, people can, I don't know, comment on the Instagram or whatever and ask us questions about the Alfred plea, and I can clarify more in the next episode if I have to. So have you ever heard of an Alfred plea before, besides what I've told you?
When you explained to me what it was, I knew the situation, if I remember right, what you were talking about, but I never heard of it called an Alfred plea.
Yes. So what an Alfred plea is when it's basically a way for the state to say, we fucked up in convicting you, but we don't want you to sue us for all the abuse that happened to you in prison. So we're going to let you go free, but you still have to say you're guilty. Like, you still have to claim to be guilty is basically what it is. So, like, you go into court to accept your Alfred plea, and you stand in front of a judge. And, like, these boys specifically, and I'll play the clip in the next episode when we're talking about the case. We're talking about the court hearing. These boys, like, Jesse Miss Kelly goes, I had nothing to do with the death of these three boys. I had nothing to do with their bodies being found. I had nothing to do with anything. I don't even know the boys. I'm completely innocent, but it's at the moment in my best interest to plead guilty, so I will plead guilty. Then that person is then free to leave, if they so choose. Like, they have to sign paperwork that they're pleading guilty, but then that person is free to leave and walk the streets. Which, first of all, if they really think these people are child murderers, you're going to let them walk the streets free? Like, really? Like, seriously? So many problems with this case. Yeah. So many problems. So, now, let's talk about awfulness, horribleness, absolutely vile things that have happened, right? So, we're going to jump into West Memphis, Arkansas, in 1993, in May, to be specific. There's three boys that are second graders at Weaver Elementary. They are 8 years old, all three of them. In fact, I have their birthdays written down for when I talk about them. And they were all Cub Scouts as well, right? Like, all three of them, they were on the same Cub Scout troop. Like, I think one of the boys' mothers, after he was found, like, wore his Cub Scouts bandana on her head all the time because it just made her feel close to him. And I can only imagine that that's just awful, you know?
Yeah.
But the victims, the main victims, are three boys named Stevie Branch, Michael Moore, and Chris Byers. And I'm just going to distract for a minute.
The cat.
I am so sorry if you can hear digging right now. My cat's building a fucking sandcastle in her litter box, and I don't know why. Why does she choose to do this when I'm recording? I don't know. I'm gonna throw something at her, though.
Huh.
You are in better sight. If she starts doing that again, throw that at the litter box so that she leaves the litter box. Like, don't hit her with it.
Are you sure you want me to do this? You're not going to have PTSD of all the times I've tossed things at you?
Every time I ask Steven if he hates me, he throws something at me.
And disclosure, it is literally almost a daily occurrence. Hence the throwing things at her.
Yeah, okay, so she's out of the litter
It's
box
deserved.
now. Thank God. So now we can get back to focusing on the important things. So Stevie Branch is one of the 8-year-old boys. Let me actually pull up some pictures of the boys real quick.
Oh, good.
Well,
I get to see the cuteness and sadness of what's about to happen to these poor boys.
I know, it's awful. So let's look at Stevie Branch first. Stevie Branch was a mama's boy, very much so. Little boy. Cute as shit kid. Like, honestly, like, he's so cute. That's why it makes me so sad. Like, when you look at the other two are cute as shit, too, so you just feel so bad.
Aww.
Now, he's so cute. He lived with his mother, Pam Hobbs, and his stepfather, Terry Hobbs. And he had a little sister named Amanda. And he was born on November 28th, 1984. So he was actually the youngest of the three.
Say November 28th?
28th. I don't know why
November child. Woo, woo.
I don't know why I think.
What was the year?
1984.
Oh, geez, he would only be 2 years younger than me.
Oh, wow, really?
I was born November 1982.
Wow.
It just, same month, 2 years. He was born in the same year as my brother.
Oh, really? He's the same age as Ricky?
My brother was born in 84.
Wow. That's a little... That makes me... I can't.
So I would have been 10 when this happened.
Yep.
If he was 8 when he was murdered, I would have been 10.
Yep. So the next person, the next boy, the next victim that we're going to talk about is Michael Moore.
Not the director.
No, not the director. He was also 8 years old. He was born in July 27th, 1984. There's Michael. He had an older sister.
Angry.
Well, he was a little Cub Scout.
He was not a fan of picture day.
No. He was a little Cub Scout. He liked to play police officer. He was super cute. And when you actually look at his dad, he looks a lot like his dad, actually, which is super...
He looks like an angry police officer.
Respect
my authority.
Stop! You're cut off. So Michael Moore, he was super into Cub Scouts. And he liked playing police officer. Like, the day he went missing, I think his mom said that he had on, like, a little police officer shirt or a police officer sticker or something like that. Because his friends would play cops and robbers, and he would always have to be the cop, right? So, super cute kid.
Well, yeah, he doesn't want to be the one being arrested all the time.
He
wants to play as the...
as the arrestor.
Well, as long as you get away, you want to play the robber.
He lived with his mother, Dana, and his father, Todd. Now, this is actually, not that this is important in any way, but Michael Moore was the only person that didn't have a stepfather in the mix. His parents were together. And we'll talk about Todd a little bit more later on, because when we talk about the actual reporting of the boys being missing, Todd is kind of absent, and we'll talk about that later. And then the last boy that we have is Christopher Byers. He had ADHD, was on Ritalin. He was born on June 23rd, 1984. He lived with his mother, Melissa, and his stepfather, John Mark Byers. But from everything that I've read, John Mark Byers has never called Chris his stepson or anything like that. Like, I guess from what I've heard and read, Chris Byers, his mother Melissa was pregnant with him when she met John Mark Byers, and they got married, and John Mark raised Chris as his own for a very, very, like, until he passed, obviously. But I never have seen anything, like, there's a couple of comments where you hear that their relationship wasn't good, but other than that, like, John Mark seems to be very, like, he always says, my boy. They killed my boy, my son. So he clearly didn't think of Chris as a stepchild. So from here on out, when I talk about John Mark, I'll be calling him Chris Byers' father, just because I feel like he took on the role. That's Chris. Again, very, very cute kid.
Everybody's got that 90s bull haircut.
I mean, this did happen in 1993. Later on, when we talk about Chris, you'll actually find Chris had the worst of it. When they found his body was the most mutilated.
Oh, jeez.
So
why? Out of all the cases you could start out with, we're done with Unsolved Mysteries. Now we're doing our own cases, and the first case you choose is 3 poor little 8-year-olds.
I don't know. Maybe because
little angels.
Because it's unsolved, though. It's unsolved.
I'm not questioning whether it's solved or not.
The reason that this case always sticks out to me so much, I don't know why I picked this case either. I'm just going to be completely honest with you.
Can't we have a good old-fashioned murder of an adult?
I got super...
Trying to make us cry and everything.
I got super, like, overwhelmed doing all of the research for this because I had literally, like, we decided we were doing this case on Sunday or Saturday night. And I had to research all of this by today. So I got really overwhelmed with research.
Next case, we don't use Sweet Baby Angels murders.
Yes. But so I took a couple of, like, cheats and easy ways just to get some of the research done because I have 20 pages of information here. And that's just background. And that's just information on the investigation. And that's just information about Stevie and Michael and Chris. And just information about Jesse and Jason and Damien. That's all this is. There's nothing else in here. So it was just like an extremely overwhelming case to start out with, just with a lot of information. And I kind of had to, like, I love doing my own research for cases, and I kind of had to cheat a little bit. It was just, like, it was so much that I got so overwhelmed. Like, I cried at work because I was doing this research, and I was like, I'm never going to get this done. Like, it was bad. So next case probably will not be as demanding. Sorry, guys, but...
yeah, let's do the next unsolved case on someone who wanted assisted suicide or something. You know, someone that wanted to die... And not children!
I'm sorry!
Not poor little innocents!
I know, I'm sorry. I do want to cover the John Benet Ramsey case at some point.
Oh, good. Let's do that next. I mean...
So let's get the bad part out of the way so that we can get to the next part, because the next part...
bad part? Which part of this is good?
It's not good, but let's get the horrible part out of the way, the part that might make us cry, and then you can make jokes later on when we're talking about horrible police officers and awful police work, right?
Oh, great. Exciting. Let's go.
Okay, so on May 5th in 1993, like I said, all 3 of the boys went to Weaver Elementary, and they all went home different ways. So Pam and Amanda walk Stevie home from school at 2:45. They go to pick him up, and they walk him home. And I don't know if anybody's ever seen this movie, but there's actually a movie with Reese Witherspoon in it called Devil's Knot, based on this case. And they show him like, dancing and singing on his way home. Like, they just show him acting like a little boy, and it made it so much worse.
Jeez.
Like, and I haven't even watched the whole movie. I cried watching the trailer. It was awful. And Stevie did homework for about 15 minutes or so until Michael Moore comes over.
So this is 93, so maybe, was he singing some Ice Ice Baby? Or
He was just singing a cute little song to his mom. It was like, I don't even remember what it was.
It's the end of the world as we know it.
It was just cute. Like I said, that movie's not necessarily based on real events, but it is based on the case, and watching the trailer for it, I was broken inside. I cried. So he does homework for about 15 minutes, from what I can understand. And then Michael comes over and he's like, hey, I know Stevie got a new bike. Because Stevie had just gotten a new bike from his grandfather, his maternal grandfather earlier that week because of his birthday or something. I don't remember exactly what the circumstances were, but he just got a new bike, right? So Michael comes over and is like, hey, can Stevie ride bikes? Jackie Hicks is the name of the grandfather, by the way, that gives him this bike, and we'll talk about him a little bit later because I have some theories, and one of the theories is actually corroborated by Pam Hobbs. So Pam tells Stevie, yeah, totally, you can go outside, but you have to be home by 4:30 because Pam can't drive herself to work. Pam got a DWI at some point, and so her license is suspended, so she can't drive herself to work. So she's like, you have to be home by 4:30 so that your stepdad can take me to work, and you're only 8, so I can't leave you at home by yourself, that type of thing. Because she was a night waitress, so she had to be to work at 5. And just a heads up, I don't know how Chris got home that evening, but Michael walks home by himself every day. And we'll talk about that in a little bit because there's a couple of weird things that a boy named Aaron says happened on Michael's ride home, or Michael's walk home. So Chris Byers then shows up at Stevie's, but he shows up at the house at about 3:30, so by that time, Michael and Stevie have already gone. They're already out playing outside somewhere. But Chris Byers does see that there's a show on TV that he likes to watch, and he's like, hey, do you mind if I stick around for 15 minutes and watch this show? Because obviously he's 8. It was a little cartoon. I think it was maybe like the Muppets or something.
93, probably the Muppet Babies.
Actually, I think that's what it was.
Muppet Babies.
I'm too young for that. I don't know what that is. I'm sorry.
It's a cartoon of the Muppets as babies.
I've never seen it.
Like
I saw
Baby Kermit.
I saw Baby Looney Tunes.
No, Muppet Babies.
Sorry.
I used to watch it because I was 10.
But, so Chris sees that this show that he likes is on, and he's like, can I stick around and watch it for a few minutes before I go find the other two? And Pam's like, yeah, sure. And Pam says that she thinks Chris left around 4 to go find the other boys.
So they were all friends? They all knew each other?
They were all friends. They all were really close at school, and they all hung out after school and played. Like, Michael and Stevie were, best friends. So they hung out all the time. And I think Chris was kind of new to their friend group. Like, Chris, I don't know exactly how it happened, but they lived, Chris and Michael lived on the same side of town, and then Stevie lived on another side of town. So, however it worked out, Chris was new to the friend group, but obviously the boys were 8 years old. They were like, as long as you know how to play this game and that game, sure, you can hang out with us, right?
As long as we play some tag.
Right.
Hide and seek.
He leaves Pam's house at 4 p.m., and at some point, John Mark Byers says that he saw his son riding, I don't know what the technical term is for it, but I know it was a super big thing in the 90s, and a lot of people got hurt doing it. But he sees Chris riding his skateboard, because Chris doesn't have a bike, Chris has a skateboard. So So they see Chris.
So you're not sure what he was riding?
He was riding a skateboard, but he was riding it on his stomach. I know there's a term for it.
Boogie board?
No, I don't know, maybe. But he was riding this skateboard in the middle of the street on his stomach. And John Mark Byers sees it, and he's like, what are you doing? That's so dangerous. And he gives him a spanking and tells him, go home and clean this and that. And then once you're done cleaning, you can come back outside and play. But I need you to go do this because you're being punished because that's extremely dangerous. And I don't want you to think it's okay to do again. Obviously, right? Mm-hmm.